Good afternoon. We will look at currencies today as well as the risk-on, risk-off relationship. Let's move into the charts on our FinGraphs platform, and we'll start with a weekly chart of Euro-US dollar. As you can see, Euro-US dollar since the beginning of the year has had a very nice correction up, a strong run, and we believe that it now has reached our corrective targets. This means that this move could slow down a bit, but it is essentially not finished because it could extend until the end of our corrective up target zone here, possibly until year end early next year, and it will probably find its targets within the 116 that we have already seen up to 123. So the euro on a long-term basis is still correcting up. Looking at the daily chart is in an impulsive uptrend, and it has almost or started to reach our impulsive targets up. Also here, there's a bit more time left to fulfill the targets, which could extend over the next few months towards 121. That said, we're slowly getting overbought at this stage. We could see our envelopes touching each other, as well as our risk index, which has entered the overbought zone. It hasn't started to reverse yet, but it is a situation where the risk reward has started to deteriorate. Now, looking at the hourly chart, we can see that we've had a very nice run during July. We've reached our impulsive targets up, which are now labeled done. We're almost overbought, not quite, and we've entered into what could be, for now, a sideways consolidation. The targets we could envisage would probably be towards the lower end of our envelope, so towards 116.50. If we were to make it below, then we would be able to call a more aggressive correction. That said, we're not there yet, so at the moment, we're in a slight consolidation on the euro. Looking at all three charts together, so we're still moving up in a corrective way on the weekly, possibly towards year end and towards 123. On the daily over the next few months, risk reward has deteriorated, but it's probably a bit more push into the 121s, possibly over the next few months. That said, we're a bit overbought, so we could possibly see an intermediate correction, which may be starting to materialize here on the hourly, but we don't have quite enough proof for that yet. So we would call it an exhausted uptrend at the moment, which has fulfilled its targets. Now, it's interesting to look at the euro because we think it's the main driver of what is happening on equity markets. And we first look at the S&P 500 on this investor's view, so with a weekly, a daily, and an hourly chart. And all three are still in a bull at the moment, so we would call this a potential continuous uptrend. We could, however, see that our targets are quite well extended. We could see that our impulsive targets have been reached, that our envelopes are touching each other, and that we're in the overbought zone, that the daily is also overbought, and that we're looking at our impulsive 2 targets, our very extended targets. So there's not much potential here over the next few months. And the hourly is consolidating, has pretty much fulfilled its targets, has been overbought. So it might be a consolidation, it might move up a bit more still, but there's not that much over the next few months to be gained from this situation. What is also interesting is that we could see that from May, the S&P 500 has continued up, and we will see in the next chart that has not been the case for the Euro stocks. So let's turn to the Euro stocks, also on an investor's view. It is still positive on a weekly basis and quite in the middle of the range. So with targets which are still quite aggressive. So although it is not looking quite as good over the medium and short term at the moment, we believe that the potential, if it manages to reaccelerate towards the end of the year and early next year, in comparison to the S&P, which was quite overstretched already, the potential of the Euro stocks is probably higher than what we could see on the S&P 500. That said, at the moment, what is really ruling the Euro stocks is the euro, which has been very strong. And we could see that since the beginning of May, we've seen a consolidation down on the Euro stocks. It's interesting to see that the moves are not that much different than on the S&P, but when the S&P accelerates up, when the euro is strong, the correction up is very, very small on the Euro stocks. And on the contrary, the other way around, when the S&P corrects down, the S&P 500 corrects in a much more stronger way. Now, we could see that we've had this little reaction up and we've had the reaction down in the euro. So it is the euro dollar really driving the euro stocks at the moment. Now, does this mean that we're in a risk-off or risk-on situation? Well, we'll have to look at other parameters to understand that. So first of all, and so I just wanted to extend on this comparison. So the S&P 500 still moving up with a strong euro, so a weak dollar, and the euro stocks still consolidating down with a strong euro and hence a weaker European markets. It acts as a headwind. Now we look at a typical risk-off, risk-on barometer, which is dollar-yen. And we can see that the uptrend here is still in place, but is pretty much stalled at the moment. And indeed, we're getting quite a strong intermediate correction on the daily chart. And this intermediate correction is still corrective for now and could move down in towards the 108s, 107s, and still remain corrective. At the moment, it is moving lower, as we can see on the hourly, and this move might be almost finished. That said, again, is that really a risk-off these days? Probably not the best gauge at the moment, because what is really weak here is the dollar. And so it might be another idea to look at euro-yen, so the euro versus the yen, as a better risk-on, risk-off gauge. And what we can see here is that it has accelerated quite strongly since the middle of next year, and it too has reached its corrective targets up between 126 and 135, and we may expect some work at this stage as we have reached these initial levels. The daily is also into the high end of its targets. Our envelopes are touching each other. The risk index is not quite overbought, but it is a situation which is slowly, or could slowly, be getting exhausted. Also on the hourly, we've pretty much reached our targets. Our envelopes are touching each other. We're missing an overbought situation, but we could see a bit of consolidation here. So in general, although it's no clear-cut situation that we're moving risk-off, the risk-on move, the very strong risk-on move that we've seen since April should be slowly dying out. Now we look at a similar situation. We look at another risk-on, risk-off gauge, which is gold. And gold is, at the moment, still negative on a weekly chart and has turned positive again on our daily charts. And it does show quite a lot of potential here. So you could wonder, yeah, well, that looks very risk-off at the moment. And the hourly has moved up, but it does seem already to be exhausted. And in a way, again here, we're very much influenced by the US dollar relationship, as gold is quoted in US dollars. So you really would want to have a look to get an idea of the risk-on, risk-off situation of gold in euros. And gold in euros at the moment, on the weekly, is still correcting down. On a daily, still seems to have some way to go. And on the hourly, well, although it's getting oversold here, it could take another week or so until we see a bounce. So in general here, if we looked at euro gold, it's not really a very strong risk-off signification at the moment. Now finally, maybe this is a better gauge of risk-on, risk-off, and could lead into some consolidation into equities. We look at gold versus the S&P. And we can see that gold is oversold on a weekly basis. Our targets have been reached and our envelopes are touching each other. On a daily basis, we're in a similar situation where we've been oversold for quite some time. Our targets have been reached and our envelopes are touching each other. And we've had an initial move up here on gold versus the S&P on the hourly. We're in a consolidation down. We will need to hold these levels, but if we manage to accelerate here, then we could be talking by a risk-off situation. And we believe that although the signs are quite subtle at the moment, this could materialize between now and the end of August. Thank you very much and have a good summer.